came up to about 14th Street at that point. This was just wilderness. There was a few farms here. There was a few country estates. There was one village, which we'll pass a little bit later on, that was removed by eminent domain to make room for park. But so William Cullen Bryant, who was the editor of the New York Evening Post, you may have heard of Bryant Park. It's named after him. He wrote an editorial saying all the great cities, especially in Europe and Asia, they have big urban parks, and if we're going to be an international city, we need one too. And that was a great idea. People really liked the idea. But then it was Andrew Jackson Downing. He's the guy who designed the Washington Mall. I don't know if you've ever seen in Washington the big national mall between the Capitol and the Lincoln Memorial. He designed that. He was an urban planner, and he said, we don't want a park that's on the East River or the Hudson River, which is what people were thinking. We want a central park. And so the idea of Central Park was born. New York City went out and bought most of the land for Central Park through eminent domain, and they wanted to design the park. And Downing was going to design it, but he died on a boating accident in the Hudson River. So that was pretty tragic. So all of a sudden the city said, hey, we got this land, we have no one to design the park. What are we going to do? They had a competition. If you want to design a park, here are the requirements, submit your plans. And 30 people submitted plans to design Central Park. And the 30th and last one was the one that won by a guy named Frederick Law Olmsted, who today is known as the father of landscape architecture. He kind of conceived of landscape architecture. He was just a farmer from Staten Island. He actually was born up in Connecticut, but he was just a farmer, and he liked this tree with that bush, and he just kind of knew how to put it together. He and his partner, Calvert Vaux, designed Central Park. Olmsted did the landscaping, Vaux did all the bridges, the buildings, and so the architecture. Their plan was called the Greensward Plan. The Greensward Plan was a place where city dwellers could get away from the stresses of urban life and commute with nature and commute with their friends. And what made their plan unique, all the other plans were about big common spaces where people would have big events, big social things, but of course Central Park has that too. But Olmsted included places of solitude, little quiet places you can sit by yourself or read a book or sit with your partner and just enjoy a little picnic or something. And that's what makes Central Park so unique. One of the other things is that Central Park, you may have noticed Manhattan, all the streets are parallel, and the avenues are perpendicular, and it's a little monotonous perhaps. In Central Park, everything is curved and undulating. Nothing is straight. I say nothing, but this is completely straight. This is the one exception. It's called the Central Park Mall. This was kind of this was the social center of New York, and in many ways it still is. People come here to see and be seen in society. On a nice day, you see this artist down there. This is lined on both sides with artists and artisans and craftsmen and musicians and mimes and you name it. And in the summertime, this is packed. And so, picture in the old days, 1860s, the wealthy people, the gentry, would get off the horse and carriage, kind of where we came off the road back there. And picture the women with their flowing gowns and the little parasols, and men with top hats and perhaps tuxedos or whatever. And they would just stroll here to be seen in society. And that still happens today, actually, except we don't dress up, generally speaking. And at the other end of the mall, which is our next stop, is the formal centerpiece of Central Park. It's called Bethesda Fountain. We'll see that next. So in Central Park is 2.5 miles long. It's a half mile wide, so it covers 843 acres. That's like 350 hectares. It's got 7 major bodies of water, 5 big open grassy meadows. It has 3 formal gardens, including this little round one here, which is just starting to come back to life. It looked kind of lousy for the last few months, but it's gorgeous and colorful in 2 to 3 weeks. It's beautifully curated. There's also these trees. There's 4 rows of these big elm trees. You see, these are American elms. There are more American elms in this right here than any place in the world. In the 1920s, there was the Dutch elm disease, and we don't blame the Dutch for that. But they named it after them for some reason. And New York City put a lot of money into protecting those trees, and they didn't lose one tree, which is pretty awesome. So these trees are 160 years old or so.
How do they protect them?
They protected them by putting tape or something around the bottom to prevent bugs, and also I guess they sprayed them, they clipped them, they just watched them very carefully. So this part of the mall is called Literary Walk. You see all the statues of literary figures here, honoring them. So it kind of has a intellectual or academic feel. Now we're going to walk our bikes back over to the road over here. As we pass, you'll see these shiny tiles here. Some of the hex tiles have names on them. Those are benefactors who gave money to support Central Park. You'll see a bunch of celebrities' names in there, a lot of common folk as well. over on the far side, there's a couple of interest. A New York City developer and his wife Melania gave money, and they have tiles with their names on it over there, so they'll go and pay respects, or the opposite to those folks. I think you know what I'm referring to. So, unless there's any comments or questions, let's keep going. Yes?
What's with all the rocks that are?
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. Huge gray rocks all over the park. So, Center Park is supposed to be a natural setting, but the fact is, there's nothing natural here except for those rocks. That is, they graded the land, they dammed up the rivers to make lakes. Everything was artificial. Planted every tree, built the hills, and they really, except for the rocks, which are completely natural. That is a sedimentary rock called schist, which is a kind of rock. And Manhattan schist, it's called Manhattan schist because it's so prevalent here in Manhattan. And that's the bedrock that lets us build tall buildings. There's bedrock under most of Manhattan. And that's how we can build really tall buildings, because they drive steel piles down into the bedrock and the buildings stay steady. The fact is, if you ever look at Manhattan from the east or west side, you'll see lots of tall towers down by Wall Street, downtown Manhattan, and a lot of them right here in midtown Manhattan. But in the middle, it's pretty low because there's no bedrock. The bedrock's way too far down. And that's why you have neighborhoods like Tribeca, Greenwich Village, Chinatown, Little Italy, all those neighborhoods are in the middle where there's no bedrock, so the buildings are not nearly as tall. Great question. So let's walk our bikes back over to the road over there. We'll pass the Statue of William Shakespeare on the way, and then